Hey gang, as you can see, Garzy's hit middle age and is raring to go, so let's go ahead and get started. Today's adventure is called the Riddle of the Red Jewel. Seems a mysterious red jewel has thrown an elven village into turmoil, so Shaggy's got a personal investment in this one. This being a forest, you would expect to find some herbs, and sure enough, there's one at the base of every single tree. There's 10 trees in total, so that's the most herbs we've seen yet. I've got enough of a stockpile now that I will be trying to show off a different potion every update. I've got a couple new spells too, and what better way to deal with porcupines than with Spirit Claw. With this spell, about a second after you cast it, this blue rain shows up, and if you hold down the button you can create a ridiculous torrent. For now, it's time we start investigating this Ewok-style tree village. Nothing like a little doom saying to start the day. All the doors that look like knotholes in the tree rather than little huts act as stairs that take you either up or down the map. There are several places though, like right here, that you can only get to by dropping down from above. There are a number of fairy tears in this quest, and you can only carry one at a time. We'll be seeing what they're used for shortly. Once you get the hang of it, this map is fairly easy to navigate. It helps that the stairs and houses are easy to identify, and unlike, say, Tower of Thieves, the map is internally consistent. You don't really warp around. Since we can't get in there just yet, moving forward a bit, here's our first fairy tears lock, I guess. If these bridges are blinking, you'll fall right through them, and take a negligible amount of damage. However, we don't really need this one to be activated because we can get across it with a good sprint jump. Here's kind of a leap of faith, but if you were paying close attention, you might have noticed there was an upper platform on the lower screen. Believe it or not, this thing is an elevator. The beam will take you to the top of the screen, and while it's active, you can't get to the lower hut. At this point I'm switching to Rio's new spell, Weaken, which I won't be able to properly show off for a little while. You're just barely going to get to see them, but the holes on this screen will spawn dark elves. This is one fairy bridge that you do need to activate, because without solid footing you can't get into this hidden door. Well, you might be able to get in, but you definitely fall out when you leave. Scales, huh? I don't know if these elves are meant to be insane right now, but they're certainly not being very helpful. These swarming bees are sadly not affected by weakness, or Spirit Claw for that matter. So there is a scale involved. We can't do anything with it just now, even though it looks like we should be able to jump up there. They're just solid. Jumping off the left side here, we should be able to get to that door above the elf who'd locked himself in. Sure enough, I like that these two doors are visually connected, sorta. It's a good clue. I'm gonna ready the Ice Storm potion before we head in, just so you can see what that does. This room is sort of a mini-boss encounter with crazed silkworms. Ice Storm has rendered them immobile, too low to be hit by our weapons, and they're immune to magic now. So luckily we can just reset the fight. All in all, a potion of dubious merits to be sure. Of course, I'm assuming it doesn't work on bosses, although I haven't checked. Meanwhile, Spirit Claw makes short work of the silkworms. I was a little surprised that Spirit Claw didn't just work on everything here, because according to the manual, it kills everything but spirit monsters. My biggest complaint about this adventure is the music. Even though the tone of the adventure isn't exactly sinister, I don't think it warrants this kinda cheerful, happy-go-lucky theme. And according to the internet, I do have to blame my boy Yuzo for this song, so... Well, while we have been just about everywhere in the tree fort, we haven't fully investigated the ground level yet, so let's head down there and see if we can find this underground machine. And try to keep in mind the bird nest that we passed by as we were falling. We're going to get ready to regulate on some porcupine fools with weakness. What this spell does is kind of stun anything it affects just for a couple seconds. It may also do a little damage or some other kind of debuff, but again, it's another dubious spell. Since Shaggy has been bogarting all the herbs, his pouch is finally filled up. Pressing down on this discolored grass will take you to the underground. So, having brought Tito's letter to Nift, we can now toggle the energy elevator on and off, and get into that hut it was blocking. Surely there's going to be something of critical importance in there. So we'll just zip back up to the location. Yeah, that's it. What that did is trigger a fairy tears to appear in the bird nest we passed by earlier. And even though we obviously don't need it to get around, we do need it to advance the story. So taking one small leap, I do think this swarm of birds is a nice touch though. It is important to keep in mind that you can only carry the one fairy tears, so if you do have one, you have to go dump it in a lock somewhere. There's nothing else of value in the hut that would be blocked, so after turning the elevator back on, we're gonna head up to the treetops. My other complaint about this adventure is that these triggers we're doing here are super arbitrary. Talking to this guy once you have the bird nest fairy tear will cause the scales to go out of balance so that you can access them. Actually, I think if you keep talking to him at this point, he will tell you about the scales. I just neglected to do that, but still, it's not clear how these things are connected at all. Well, since Garzi never went to school for traps, he has been turned to a stone. At this point, we could change him back with a stone flesh spell or potion. But unfortunately, our only choice is to soldier on. Here's the boss, a giant moth, and you can see once you leave a stone character behind, they'll be officially dead, so at that point you can resurrect them. Being frozen works the same way, and I think resurrection is much more practical than carrying around stone flesh and melt potions. Anyways, you can see this boss is pretty intense, throwing a lot of stuff at you, but none of it really does significant damage. I do really like this part in the music here. For once I am using the MS-DOS version of the boss theme, because I think this kind of organ solo part is unique to the American conversion. There's really not much to this boss other than jumping off the tallest pillars and hacking away at him. That's why I sped it up a little. Even though it has some potential to be a pretty dynamic and interesting fight, it just ends up being kind of repetitive. Again, I don't understand the designer's fascination with these stupid undulating pillars. It would be better if they really changed heights or rose in a different rhythm or something, so you actually had to move around to hit them off. As it is, moving around just kind of screws you up. But hey, you know, just about anything is better than Hydras, right? And we're done. If you go back into the room, you get to see this weird scene. It happens real fast, but I think the room opens up from this state when you first come in to fight the moth. After the scales change balance, I was ready for Garzi to be stoned again, but he manages to evade the trap. And he does it again on the red jewel. That does mean it is a random roll against your dexterity and not just fixed the way doors work with vitality, because Garzi did get hit by all the traps on my test run. With the jewel in hand, now we need to go to sort of a hidden hut. You can see it from the ground level, but the only way to get there is to drop down. You do have to be kind of a diligent explorer to find it in the first place, but if you get there without the jewel, he does tell you that you need to come back with it. It's located right under this bridge, and since I'm holding a fairy tear, I can't deactivate it, so I'm just going to have to defy the laws of physics and gravity to get down there. I think this waterfall is a nice effect, the way it sort of flows over you. Well, we've cleansed the jewel and saved the forest. Although this ending song, Peaceful Forest, doesn't actually play in the DOS version, I'm going to use the magic of editing to insert it anyway. It's time to hunt down some post-quest loot, and we've got a good haul this time. First is the hero's shield down in the tall grass. Sierra's composers took a couple liberties with this song, mainly kind of shifting it off-key. The next treasure is the Rod of Light up in this bird nest. And dropping back down to Tito's house, we'll find the magic armor, so Garzy's going to be pretty decked out. The last piece of treasure is just robe. Back at the ranch, you can give the yellow jewel to the king, and what that does is give you 1,000 more experience, but it is magical, and we don't really need to level up anymore. So for the sake of showing off different magic, we'll just hold on to it. I don't think this is the proper art for this adventure, but it is at least forest related. We'll be going on another thrilling underground adventure next time, and there will be plenty of new magic to see. Anyway, thanks for joining me, folks. I'll see you next time on The Dark Magician.